Find MH/psychiatric professionals, clinics, and hospitals in the U.S. by state. Chapter 1. The licensing boards for mental health professionals by state. These are state licensing boards for counselor-related professions, which could be counselor, psychologist, marital therapist, or social worker. Alabama. adph.org/providers, most professions. Alaska. dced.state.ak.us/occ/occstart.cfm. Arizona. aspen.asu.edu/tilde/azbbe/directory/listing.html. psychboard.az.gov/dir, psychologists. Arkansas. state.ar.us/abes/search.php, counseling professions. state.ar.us/swlb/swlb, social workers. California Psychology Boards. bbs.ca.gov/weblookup, counseling professions. psychboard.ca.gov. Colorado. dora.state.co.us/pls/real/arms_search.disclaimer_page. dora.state.co.us/pls/real/arms_search.set_up. Connecticut. state.ct.us/dph/scripts/hlthprof.asp, most professions. Delaware. state.de.us. District of Columbia Professional License lookup. dchealth.dc.gov/prof_license/services. dchealth.dc.gov/prof_license/services/search_licensing.asp. Florida. doh.state.fl.us. doh.state.fl.us/irm00 pires/praslist.asp, a variety of professions. personalconsult.com, Naples, Florida. Georgia. medicalboard.state.ga.us, various medical professions. secure.sos.state.ga.us/my-verification, various medical professions. Hawaii. ehawaii.gov/surf/pvl. Idaho. state.id.us/isbd/search.htm. Illinois. dpr.state.il.us/license lookup. Indiana. state.in.us/hpb/mlvs/index, most professions. Iowa. docboard.org/ia. state.ia.us/nursing/licensure. Kansas. ksbsrb.org/verification, counseling professions. Kentucky. kyeasupt1.state.ky.us/opb/brdwebsearch.asp, most professions. Louisiana. lpcboard.org, counselors. lrcboard.org, rehabilitative counselor. lsbme.org/bme search/license/czarch.asp, most medical professions. Maine. pfr.informe.org/webquery/licklookup.aspx, most health professions. Maryland license lookup. dllr.state.md.us/query. Massachusetts. license.reg.state.ma.us/public/lik.asp. Michigan. cis.state.mi.us/verify. michigan.gov. michigan.gov/cis. Minnesota. docboard.org/mn. Mississippi. msdh.state.ms.us. Missouri. ded.state.mo.us/professionalregistration.pl. Montana. discoveringmontana.com/dli/bsd/license/license. discoveringmontana.com/dli/bsd/license/bsd_board/med_board. Nebraska. hhs.state.ne.us/lis/lis.asp, Nevada. glsuite.com/nvbopweb, medical professions, facilities. New Hampshire. state.nh.us/marital/mediators, marital mediators. New Jersey. state.nj.us/lps/ca, most professions. state.nj.us/lps/ca/marriage, counselors. New Mexico. rld.state.nm.us/b&c, most professions. rld.state.nm.us/b&c/counseling, counselors. rld.state.nm.us/b&c/rcb, psychologist. New York. health.state.ny.us. nicepsych.org, psychiatrist. opniced.gov/op searches, most medical professions. opniced.gov/op searches.hdm number NME. North Carolina. ncmedboard.org. nccpsychologyboard.org. North Dakota. health.state.nd.us/ndhd. ndbsway.com, social workers. Ohio. state.oh.us/med/license. state.oh.us/psychology. state.oh.us/scripts/csw, social worker, counselor. Oklahoma. okmedicalboard.org/medboard. youroklahoma.com. Oregon. bme.state.or.us, medical professions. obpe.state.or.us, psychologist. Pennsylvania. licenspa.state.pa.us. licenspa.state.pa.us/default.asp. Rhode Island. 63.72.31.182, most professions. docboard.org/ri. South Carolina. lookup.llronline.com, most professions. lookup.llronline.com/lookup. lookup.llronline.com/lookup/counselors.asp. South Dakota. state.sd.us/do, Department of Health. state.sd.us/dcr/counselor. Tennessee. state.tn.us/health/licensure. Texas Mental Health License lookup. license.state.tx.us/licenses tdh.state.tx.us/hcq/plc, some medical professions. tdh.state.tx.us/hcq/plc/lp-crost.text, counselor. tdh.state.tx.us/hcq/plc/mft.hdm number sign rosters, marriage and family therapists. tdh.state.tx.us/hcq/plc/lsw, social worker. Utah. secure.e-utah.org/llv. utah.gov. Vermont. sec.state.vt.us/seek/lrsb seek, most professions. docboard.org/vt. Virginia. 6bnet.org/dhp, most medical professions. Washington. doh.wa.gov/a-z. West Virginia. docboard.org/wv. Wisconsin. 165.189.238.43/PLSQL/PLSQL, most professions. 165.189.238.43/PLSQL/PLSQL/search_ind_health. Wyoming. wyomd.state.wy.us. Chapter 2. Use government state mental health associations to find therapists, hospitals, clinics, etc. State Government Mental Health Agencies 1. mh.alabama.gov, Alabama Department of Mental Health and Mental Retardation. hss.state.ak.us/mhb, Alaska Mental Health Board. hs.state.az.us/bhs/index.hdm, Arizona Division of Behavioral Health Services. state.ar.us/dhs/dmhs, Arkansas Division of Behavioral Health Services. dmh.cahwnet.gov, California Department of Mental Health. cdhs.state.co.us/dmh, Colorado Division of Mental Health. dmhes.state.ct.us, Connecticut Department of Mental Health. state.de.us/dHSS/DSAMH/dmhome.hdm, Delaware Division of Substance Abuse and Mental Health. DC Department of MH Health. dmh.dc.gov/main.shdm, District of Columbia Department of Mental Health. dcf.state.fl.us/mental health, Florida Mental Health Services. mhdad.dhr.georgia.gov/portal/site, Georgia Division of Mental Health. hawaii.gov/health/mental-health, Hawaii Mental Health Services. health_.idaho.gov/portal/alias_rainbow/lang__and-us_tabid_3458/desktop-default.aspx, Idaho Mental Health Program. dhs.state.il.us/mhdd/mh, Illinois Mental Health Services. in.gov/fss/service mental, Indiana Division of Mental Health and Addiction. dhs.state.ia.us/mhdd, Iowa Division of Mental Health and Developmental Disabilities. srskansas.org/hcp/mhmain.hdm, Kansas Mental Health Program. chfs.ky.gov/mhmr, Department for Mental Health and Mental Retardation. dhh.state.las/offices/id=62, Louisiana Office of Mental Health, main.gov/dhhs/mh, Maine Behavioral and Developmental Services. Maryland Mental Hygiene Administration. dhmh.state.md.us/mha/index.hdm, Maryland Mental Hygiene Administration. mass.gov/portal/index.jsp page ID =EAHS2 Agency Landing &L =4 &L0 Home &L1 Government &L2 Departments +& Divisions &L3 Department of Mental Health &SID EAHS2, Massachusetts Department of Mental Health. Michigan.gov/mdch/0,1607, 7-132-2941_4868-00.html Mental Health and Disability Services. dhs.state.mn.us/main/groups/disabilities/documents/pub/DHS_ID_000085.hcsb Mental Health Division. dmh.state.ms.us Department of Mental Health. dmh.missouri.gov, Missouri Department of Mental Health. dphs.mt.gov/mentalhealth/index.shtml, Montana Addictive and Mental Disorders Division. hhs.state.ne.us/behavioral_health, Nebraska Mental Health, Substance Abuse and Addiction Services. mhds.state.nv.us, Nevada Division of Mental Health and Developmental Services. dhhs.state.nh.us/programs+sign services/topic.htm selection item =22, New Hampshire Mental Health Programs. state.nj.us/human services/dmhs/index.html, New Jersey Mental Health Services. bhc.state.nm.us, New Mexico Behavioral Health Collaborative. omh.state.ny.us, New York Office of Mental Health. dhhs.state.nc.us/mhddsas, North Carolina Mental Health Programs. nd.gov/dhs/services/mental health/index.html, North Dakota Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services. mh.state.oh.us, Ohio Department of Mental Health. odmhsas.org, Oklahoma Department of Mental Health. Oregon.gov/dhs/mental health/index.shtml, Oregon Mental Health Services. dpw.state.pa.us/disable/mental health services, Pennsylvania Mental Health M Services. mhrh.state.ri.us, Rhode Island Department of Mental Health. state.sc.us/dmh, South Carolina Department of Mental Health. dhs.sd.gov/dmh, South Dakota Division of Mental Health. state.tn.us/mental, Tennessee Department of Mental Health and Developmental Disabilities. dshs.state.tx.us/mental health.shtm, Texas Mental Health Services. hsmh.state.ut.us, Utah Division of Substance Abuse and Mental Health. healthvermont.gov/mh/mhindex.aspx, Vermont Department of Developmental and Mental Health Services. dmhmrsas.virginia.gov, Virginia Department of Mental Health. dshs.wa.gov/mental health, Washington State Mental Health Division. wvdhr.org/bhhf, West Virginia Bureau for Behavioral Health. dhfs.state.wi.us/bqa consumer/aoda_mh/aoda_mhindex.htm, Wisconsin Mental Health Services. wdh.state.wy.us/mental health/index.html, Wyoming Mental Health Division. State Government Mental Health Agencies 2. Alaska Division of Behavioral Health. Department of Health and Social Services. POG 110620. Juneau, Alaska 99811-0620. 907-465-3370. 907-465-2225, TTY. health.state.ak.us. hss.state.ak.us/dbh. Alaska. Alaska Mental Health Board. 431 North Franklin Street. Number 200. Juneau, Alaska 99801. 907-465-3071. alaska.gov. hss.state.ak.us/mhb. Arkansas. Division of Behavioral Health Services. 4313 West Markham Street. Little Rock, Arkansas 72205. 501-686-9164. arkansas.gov/dhhs/dmhs. California Department of Mental Health. 1600 9th Street, Room 151. Sacramento, California 95814. 800-896-4042, in CA. 916-654-2309. dmh.dmh@dmh.ca.gov. dmh.ca.gov. Colorado. Division of Mental Health/Alcohol and Drug Abuse Division. Colorado Department of Human Services. 3824 West Princeton Circle. Denver, Colorado 80236. 303-866-7400. cdhs.state.co.us/a/d. cdhs.state.co.us/dmh. Connecticut. Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services. 410 Capitol Avenue. POB 341431. Hartford, Connecticut 06134. 800-446-7348. 860-418-7000. ct.gov/dm/has. Delaware Division of Substance Abuse and Mental Health. Delaware Health and Social Services. Main Administration Building. 1901 North DuPont Highway. Newcastle, Delaware 19720. 302-255-9399. State.de.us. District of Columbia Community Service Agency. Department of Mental Health. 1250 U Street, NW. Washington, D.C. 20009. 202-671-4010. 202-698-2525. 202-442-4202, Intake Office. dds.dc.gov. Florida Mental Health Programs Office. Department of Children and Families. 1317 Winewood Boulevard, Building 6, Room 275. Tallahassee, Florida 32399-0700. 850-488-8304. dcf.state.fl.us. state.fl.us/cf_web. dcf.state.fl.us/mental health, Florida Mental Health Services. Georgia Division of Mental Health/Developmental Disabilities and Addictive Diseases. Department of Human Resources. 2 Peachtree Street, NW 22.224. Atlanta, Georgia 30303-3142. 404-657-2260. dhr.state.ga.us. mhdad.dhr.georgia.gov. Guam Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse. 790 Governor Carlos G. Camacho Road. Tamuning, Guam 96911. 671-647-5330. 671-647-5303. Hawaii Behavioral Health Administration. Department of Health. 1250 Punchbowl Street. Honolulu, Hawaii 96813. 808-586-4416. hawaii.gov/health. Hawaii Adult Mental Health Division. 1250 Punchbowl Street, Room 256. Honolulu, Hawaii 96813. 808-586-4770. doh.hawaii.gov. md.org. Idaho Adult and Children's Mental Health Programs. Division of Family and Community Services. Department of Health and Welfare. POB 83720-5th floor. Boise, Idaho 83720-0036. 208-334-0969. state.id.us/dhw/mental health. Illinois Division of Mental Health. Department of Human Services. 160 N LaSalle, 10th floor. Chicago, Illinois 60601. 800-843-6154, hotline. 217-785-6023. 800-447-6404, TTY. dhs.state.il.us/mhdd/mh. Indiana Division of Mental Health and Addiction. Family and Social Services Administration. 402 West Washington Street, Room W353. Indianapolis, Indiana 46204-2739. 317-232-7845. in.gov/FSSA. Iowa State Mental Health Agency/State DD Program. Division of Mental Health and Disability Services. Department of Human Services. Hoover State Office Building, 5th floor. 1305 East Walnut Street. Des Moines, Iowa 50319-0114. 515-281-6 7277. dhs.state.ia.us. Kansas. Healthcare Policy Division Mental Health. Department of Social and Rehabilitation Services. Docking State Office Building. 915 SW. Harrison Street, 9th floor. Topeka, Kansas 66612-1570. 913-296-7272. srskansas.org/hcp/mhmain.hdm. Kentucky. Early Childhood Mental Health, ages 0 to 5. Division of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services. 100 Fair Oaks Lane 4 ED. Frankfort, Kentucky 40621. 502-564-4456. mhmr.ky.gov/mhsas/dtx.asp. Kentucky. Opportunities for Family Leadership, OFL. Might DOS. 100 Fair Oaks Lane 4 EB. Frankfort, Kentucky 40621. 502-564-4456. mhmr.ky.gov/mhsas/ofl.asp. Kentucky. Division of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services. Cabinet for Health and Family Services. 100 Fair Oaks Lane 4 ED. Frankfort, Kentucky 40621-0001. 502-564-4456. mhmr.ky.gov/kdmhmrs/default.asp. Kentucky. Department for Mental Health/Developmental Disabilities and Addiction Services. Cabinet for Health and Family Services. 100 Fair Oaks Lane 4 EB. Frankfort, Kentucky 40621-0001. 502-564-4527. mhmr.ky.gov. Louisiana. Office of Mental Health. Louisiana Department of Health and Hospitals. 628 North 4th Street 4th floor. POB 4049. Baton Rouge, Louisiana 70821-4049. 225-342-2540. dhh.la.gov. Maine. Department of Health and Human Services. 11 State House Station. 221 State Street. Augusta, Maine 04333. 207-287-3707. maine.gov/dhhs. Maryland. Mental Hygiene Administration. Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. Spring Grove Hospital Center. 55 Wade Avenue, Dix Building. Catonsville, Maryland 21228. 800-735-2258, TTY. 410-402-8452. dhmh.state.md.us/MHA. Massachusetts. Department of Mental Health. 25 Stanford Street. Boston, Massachusetts 02114. 617-626-8123. mass.gov/DMH. Mental Health. North Dakota. Division of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services. Developmental Disabilities Division. Disabilities Determination Services. 1237 West Divide Avenue. Number 1C. Bismarck, North Dakota 58501-1208. 701-328-8920. 800-755-2719, in ND. nd.gov/dhs/services/mental health. Michigan. Department of Community Health. Capitol View Building, 7th floor. 201 Townsend Street. Lansing, Michigan 48913. 517-373-3500. michigan.gov/mdch. Minnesota. Department of Human Services. epub 64988. St. Paul, Minnesota 55164-0988. 651-431-2368. dhs.state.mn.us. Mississippi. Department of Mental Health. 1101 Robert E. Lee Building. 239 North Lamar Street. Jackson, Mississippi 39201. 601-359-1288. dmh.state.ms.us. Missouri. Department of Mental Health. 1706 East Elm. epub 687. Jefferson City, Missouri 65102. 573-751-3070. 800-364-9687. dmh.mo.gov. Montana. Addictive and Mental Disorders Division. Department of Public Health and Human Services. epub 202,905. Helena, Montana 59620-2905. 406-444-3969. hhsamddmh@mt.gov. dphhs.mt.gov. Nebraska. Division of Behavioral Health Services. Nebraska Department of Health and Human Services. epub 98925. Lincoln, Nebraska 68509-8925. 402-471-7766. hhs.state.ne.us. Nevada. Division of Mental Health and Developmental Services. Department of Health and Human Services. 4126 Technology Way. Number 201. Carson City, Nevada 89706. 775-684-5943. mhds.state.nv.us. New Jersey. Division of Mental Health Services. New Jersey Department of Human Services. 50 East State Street, Capitol Center. epub 727. Trenton, New Jersey 08625-0727. 800-382-6717. 609-777-0702. state.nj.us/humanservices/dmhs/home. New Mexico. Behavioral Health Collaborative. New Mexico Human Services Department. epub 2348. Santa Fe, New Mexico 87504. 505-476-7108. state.nm.us. New Hampshire. Bureau of Behavioral Health. Department of Health and Human Services. 105 Pleasant Street. Concord, New Hampshire 03301. 603-271-5007. dhhs.state.nh.us. New York. Office of Mental Health. 44 Holland Avenue. Albany, New York 12229. 518-474-4403. omh.state.ny.us. North Carolina. Division of Mental Health. Developmental Disabilities and Substance Abuse Services. Department of Health and Human Services. MSC 3001. Raleigh, North Carolina 27699-3001. 919-733-7011. ncdhhs.gov/mhddsas. Ohio. Ohio Department of Mental Health. 30 East Broad Street 8th floor. Columbus, Ohio 43215-3430. 614-466-2596. mh.state.oh.us. Oklahoma. Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services. epub 53277. Oklahoma City, Oklahoma 73152-3277. 405-522-3878. odmhsas.org. Oregon. Addictions in Mental Health Division. 500 Summer Street NE. E86. Salem, Oregon 97301-1118. 503-945-9704. egov.oregon.gov/dhs/mental health. Pennsylvania. Office of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services. Department of Public Welfare. POG 2675. Harrisburg, Pennsylvania 17105-2675. 717-787-6443. dpw.state.pa.us. Puerto Rico. Mental Health and Anti-Addiction Services Administration. Ave Barbosa 414. POG 21414. San Juan, Puerto Rico 00928-1414. 787-764-3670. 787-764-3795. 787-765-5888, fax. asmca.gobierno.pr. Rhode Island. Department of Mental Health, Retardation and Hospitals. 14 Harrington Road. Cranston, Rhode Island 02920. 401-462-3201. mhrh.ri.gov. South Carolina. Department of Mental Health. POB 485. Columbia, South Carolina 29202. 803-898-8319. scdmh.org. state.sc.us/dmh. South Dakota. Division of Mental Health. Department of Human Services. Hillsview Plaza, East Highway 34. C/0500E Capital. Pierre, South Dakota 57501-5070. 605-773-5991. 605-773-5990, TTY. dhs.sd.gov/dmh. Tennessee. Department of Mental Health and Developmental Disabilities. Cordell Hull Building, 3rd floor. 425 5th Avenue North. Nashville, Tennessee 37243. 615-532-6500. state.tn.us/mental. Vermont. Department of Mental Health. Agency of Human Services. POB 70. Burlington, Vermont 05402-0070. 802-652-2000. vdh.state.vt.us. healthvermont.gov. Virgin Islands. Division of Mental Health, Alcoholism and Drug Dependency Services. Barbel Plaza South, 1st floor. St. Thomas, Virgin Islands 00801. 340-774-4888, extension 2610. usvi-doh.org. Virginia. Department of Mental Health, Mental Retardation and Substance Abuse Services. POB 1797. Richmond, Virginia 23218. 804-786-3921. dmhmrsas.virginia.gov. Washington. Mental Health Division. Department of Social and Health Services. POB 45320. Olympia, Washington 98504-5320. 360-902-0790. dshs.wa.gov. West Virginia. Bureau for Behavioral Health and Health Facilities. Department of Health and Human Resources. 350 Capitol Street Room 350. Charleston, West Virginia 25301-3702. 304-558-0298. wvdhhr.org. wvdhhr.org/bhhf. Wisconsin. Bureau of Prevention, Treatment, and Recovery. Division of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services. Department of Health Services. epub 7851. Madison, Wisconsin 53707-7851. 608-266-2717. dhs.wisconsin.gov/substabuse. Wyoming. Mental Health Division. Department of Health. 6101 Yellowstone Road. Number 220. Cheyenne, Wyoming 82002-0480. 307-777-7094. health.wyo.gov. State Government Mental Health Agencies 3. Preface letters with Department of Mental Health. Alabama Mental Health Office. 100 North Union St. epub 30140. Montgomery, Alabama 36130-1410. 334-242-3417. Fax 334-242-0684. mh.state.al.us. Alaska Mental Health Office. 50 Main St. Number 214. epub 110620. Juneau, Alaska 99811-0620. 907-465-3370. 907-465-2225, TTD/TTY. Fax 907-465-2668. hss.state.ak.us/dmhdd. Arizona Mental Health Office. Behavioral Health Services. 2122 E Highland. Phoenix, Arizona 85016. 602-381-8999. Fax 602-553-9140. hs.state.az.us/bhs/home.hdm. Arkansas Mental Health Office. Donaghy Plaza W. MS 3440. epub 1437. Little Rock, Arkansas 72203-1437. 501-682-8650. state.ar.us/dhs. California Mental Health Office. state.ca.us. Colorado Mental Health Office. 3824 West Princeton Circle. Denver, Colorado 80236. 303-866-7400. Fax 303-866-7428. cdhs.state.co.us/ohr/mhs/index.html. Connecticut Mental Health Office. state.ct.us. Delaware Mental Health Office. state.de.us. District of Columbia Mental Health Office. 2700 Martin Luther King Avenue. SE. St. Elizabeth Hospital. L Building. Washington, D.C. 20032. 202-373-7225. Florida Mental Health Office. 1311 Winewood Boulevard. Building 5. Number 215. Tallahassee, Florida 32301. 904-488-4257. doh.state.fl.us/cms/index.html. Georgia Mental Health Office. 878 Peachtree St. Northeast. Number 706. Atlanta, Georgia 30309. 404-894-6670. state.ga.us/departments/dhr. Hawaii Mental Health Office. 1000, Bishop St. Number 615. Honolulu, Hawaii 96813. 808-548-4769. Hawaii.gov/DHS. Idaho Mental Health Office. 450 West State St. Boise, Idaho 83720-0036. 208-334-5500. state.id.us/dhwgd_www/home.html. Illinois Mental Health Office. 402 Stratton Office Building. Springfield, Illinois 62706. 217-782-7395. state.il.us/agency/dhs/mhddfsnp.html. Indiana Mental Health Office. 117 East Washington St. Indianapolis, Indiana 46204-3647. Iowa Mental Health Office. Hoover State Office Building. Des Moines, Indiana 50319. 800-972-2017. 515-278-2502. dhs.state.ia.us. Kansas Mental Health Office. 506 North State Office Building. Topeka, Kansas 66612. 913-296-1808. Kentucky Mental Health Office. 100 Fair Oaks Lane. 4th FL. Frankfort, Kentucky 40621. 502-564-4527. dmhmrs.chr.state.ky.us. Louisiana Mental Health Office. 1201 Capitol Access Road. epub 629. Baton Rouge, Louisiana 70821-0629. 504-342-9500. Fax 504-342-5568. dhh.state.la.us. Maine Mental Health Office. 40 State House Station. Augusta, Maine 04333-0040. 207-287-4200. Fax 207-287-4268. state.me.us/dmhmrsa. Maryland Mental Health Office. 201 West Preston St. 4th FL. O'Connor Building. Baltimore, Maryland 21201. 877-463-3464. 410-767-6860. dhmh.state.md.us. Massachusetts Mental Health Office. 25 Stanford St. Boston, Massachusetts 02210. 617-727-5600. 617-727-4350. state.ma.us/ea/agencies/dmh.htm. Michigan Mental Health Office. state.mi.us. Minnesota Mental Health Office. 444 Lafayette Road. St. Paul, Minnesota 55155. 651-297-5242. health.state.mn.us/divs. Mississippi Mental Health Office. 1101 Robert E. Lee Building. 239 North Lamar St. Jackson, Mississippi 39201. 601-359-1288. dmh.state.ms.us. swmmh.com, Southwest Mississippi Mental Health Complex. dom.state.ms.us/mentalhealth/mentalhealth.html. Missouri Mental Health Office. 1706 East Elm St. epub 687. Jefferson City, Missouri 65102. 800-364-9687. 573-751-3070. modmh.state.mo.us. Montana Mental Health Office. POB 4210. 111 Sanders. Number 202. Helena, Montana 59604. 406-444-2995. dphhs.state.mt.us. Nebraska Mental Health Office. POB 95007. Lincoln, Nebraska 68509. 402-471-2330. hhs.state.ne.us/beh/behindx.htm. Nevada Mental Health Office. State Capitol Complex. 505 East King St. Carson City, Nevada 98710. 702-687-4440. state.nv.us/hr. New Hampshire Mental Health Office. State Office PKS. 105 Pleasant St. Concord, New Hampshire 03301. 603-271-5013. New Jersey Mental Health Office. POB 364. Trenton, New Jersey 08625. 609-984-0755. state.nj.us/health/fhs/scomi.htm. New Mexico Mental Health Office. 1190 South St. Francis Drive. POB 26110. Santa Fe, New Mexico 87502-6110. 505-827-2613. health.state.nm.us. New York Mental Health Office. 44 Holland St. Albany, New York 12229. 518-473-3456. omh.state.ny.us. North Carolina Mental Health Office. 620 Northwest St. POB 26053. Raleigh, North Carolina 27611. 919-733-6566. dhhs.state.nc.us. North Dakota Mental Health Office. State Capitol Building. Bismarck, North Dakota 58505. 701-224-2970. state.nd.us/dhs/dhsweb.nsf. Ohio Mental Health Office. State Office Tower. 30 East Broad St. 8th FL. Columbus, Ohio 43266-0315. 614-466-1483. mh.state.oh.us. Oklahoma Mental Health Office. 1200 Northeast 13th St. POB 53277. OKC, Oklahoma 73152-3277. 405-522-3908. odmhsas.org. Oregon Mental Health Office. 2575 Bittern St. Northeast. Salem, Oregon 97310. 503-975-9700. omhs.mhd.hr.state.or.us. Pennsylvania Mental Health Office. POB 90. Harrisburg, Pennsylvania 17108. 800-986-4550. health.state.pa.us/php/special.htm. Rhode Island Mental Health Office. 14 Harrington Road. Cranston, Rhode Island 02920-3080. 401-464-3201. Fax 401-462-3204. mhrh.state.ri.us. South Carolina Mental Health Office. 2414, Bull St. Number 304. Columbia, South Carolina 29202. 803-898-8581. State.sc.us/DMH. South Dakota Mental Health Office. East Highway 34, Hillsview Plaza. 500 East Capitol Avenue. Pierre, South Dakota 57501-5070. 605-733-5990. Fax 605-733-5483. State.sd.us/DHS. Tennessee Mental Health Office. 3rd FL. Cordell Hull Building. 425 5th Avenue North. Nashville, Tennessee 37243. 615-532-6500. State.tn.us/mental. Texas Mental Health Office. 909 West 45th St. POG 12668 to 2668. Austin, Texas 78711. 800-252-8154. 512-454-3761. mhmr.state.tx.us. Utah Mental Health Office. 120 North 200 W. Number 415. SLC Utah 84145. 801-538-4270. hsmh.state.ut.us. Vermont Mental Health Office. 103 South Main St. Weeks Building. Waterbury, Vermont 05671-1601. 802-241-2609. Fax 802-241-1129. State.vt.us/DMH. Virginia Mental Health Office. POG 1797. Richmond, Virginia 23218-1797. 804-786-0992. dmhmrsas.state.va.us. mentalhealth.va.gov. Washington Mental Health Office. POG 1788. Olympia, Washington 98504. 800-737-0617. 800-446-0259. Emergency. wa.gov/dshs/hrs/hrs2hp.html. West Virginia Mental Health Office. 350 Capital St. Number 350. Charleston, West Virginia 25301-3702. 304-558-0298. wvdhhr.org/bhhf. Wisconsin Mental Health Office. 1 West Wilson St. Number 433. POB 7851. Madison, Wisconsin 53707. 608-261-6746. Fax 608-261-6748. Wyoming Mental Health Office. State.wy.us.